Hello and welcome to News Desk. I'm Melissa Chan.
And I'm Jared Reed.
This week, we are taking a closer look at the Louvre heist, and then we'll be exploring other famous art crimes, from successful recovered art cases to unsolved mysteries. We'll be speaking to two people who will be able to answer our questions about the rarefied world of art and the criminals operating in that space. We'll have Amelie Ebbinghaus, director of the Art Loss Register, and also art crimes investigator Arthur Brand.
And of course, as usual, at the table, we have our very own Cherry Chan in the chat. She's going to monitor your questions and comments and provide useful links and pointers along the way. And listen, this is a message for you because we've got two really amazing guests today. They're two of the top experts on art heists, and you have the opportunity to ask them basically anything you have ever wanted to know about how this happens and what happens now after art's stolen. What happens to it and how does it come back to its owners if that ends up happening? We're going to try and address all of these questions as we can. To kick things off, though, Cherry has our weekly poll.
Yeah.
Take it away.
This week, we are not doing a poll, but a quiz for you. So, related to our theme, we're going to ask this question. Which of the following paintings is currently stolen and missing? And when I'm telling you the options, Jared is actually going to show the picture of these paintings. The first option is Pablo Picasso's Guernica. So here you can see, and sorry for the typo in our poll option. We're missing an S there.
Okay.
But, yeah. And then the second option is Gustav Klimt's The Kiss, this one. And the third is Claude Monet's Water Lilies. And the final one is Vincent van Gogh's Poppy Flowers.
Maybe we can run through them again. Shall we just quickly do it once more? So the first one...
So one of these have been stolen, is that right?
Stolen and still missing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have...
Picasso's Guernica.
Yeah.
And then Klimt's The Kiss.
Yeah.
Monet's Water Lilies. And Vincent van Gogh's Poppy Flowers. Right, so let us know which one do you think is the right answer, and then we will announce the poll result, the quiz result later.
Thanks a lot, Cherry. And as usual, of course, please do send in your questions and comments, and we'll do our best to put them to our two very knowledgeable guests. Of course, we've had a bit of weigh-in already on our community post that went live yesterday. So we have a comment from Clement Foley. This is a nice movie plot, and it really is, right? We've been sort of talking a lot about the Ocean's 11 series and how this really seems to be borrowed from that.
Yeah, totally.
Mr. E170 says, where are they going to unload the jewels and how do they keep them from being identified? That's a really good question.
Great question.
Which we'll put to our guests. And Rob is saying, he's calling on France to modernise your museum. He says display cases are things of the past. He says it's a one-dimensional approach for public display is how high-end luxury item retail works. And I guess stolen gems are not high-end luxury retail, but I guess he's arguing that the gems should have more limited access than they did, which is, I guess, probably not the point of a museum, but it's an interesting point of view as well.
Absolutely. And so if you're just joining us, a reminder of our topic, we're talking about the Louvre heist, but we'll also be discussing other missing art pieces, other famous heists in the past, to our two experts and the fascinating work that they do. And so let's just bring them in right now.
Yeah.
I'll bring in Amelie Ebbinghaus of the Art Loss Register. Thank you so much for joining us. And Arthur Brand, an independent art crimes investigator. Welcome to you both. And I know, Arthur, one of your big recent discoveries or recoveries, rather, was this Van Gogh. So hopefully we'll be talking about that very soon. Thank you again to both of you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be there. And it was a big announcement. I hope we can actually answer all the questions now.
Well, yeah, send the questions in and we will try. I'm sure you can answer most of them. Let's just get a few things out of the way. Let's talk about this Louvre heist and the latest. Arthur, a couple of questions your way first. What's the latest information we have about the Louvre heist?
Well, the latest information is that there are two suspects in custody. One was arrested while he was trying to board a plane to Algeria. Probably the French police was already monitoring them. Maybe they knew already 2 days before that this was a suspect. They followed him, hopefully waiting for him to bring them to the crowns and the jewels and the diamonds. But once he boarded a plane, they had to arrest him, but because if not, he would have escaped. So the latest news is 2 in custody and 2 suspects are still on the run. And the diamonds and other gems have not been recovered yet.
Is there a reason why we don't know the names of these suspects? Is that just something that the French authorities don't regularly reveal as part of their process? Where do you think the investigation is right now? Are they just trying to scramble to see if the stolen items are still in the country of France?
Yeah, the French police was a little bit annoyed that some reporter broke the news that somebody was arrested, because, as I said before, they probably were following these guys. And, you know, the 2 guys who are still on the run now know that 2 of them have been identified, so they are hiding. So the French police is not very happy with this. And what they are doing now is probably raiding the homes of the 4 suspects, or at least the 2 they have in custody. They are raiding not only their homes, but also homes of friends or family members. And hopefully they will find the jewels somewhere beneath a couch or their bed, you know. So that's what they are doing now. And of course, they are eavesdropping on other criminals who are related to these 2 suspects. So there's a lot of work to do right now.
Arthur, was this heist kind of doomed to fail? It happened at the Louvre. It's the center of Paris. There's tons of surveillance cameras around.
Well, you know, when I woke up on Sunday morning hearing it that they targeted the Louvre, I could not believe it. You know, the Louvre is something sacred. It's one of the most famous museums in the world. And then when you hear that they came in and went out in 7 minutes, stealing the French crown jewels, for God's sake, I couldn't believe it. And I'm doing this job for 20 years. And I think that they did it because they, you know, when you watch movies, movies about art heist, you see somebody descending from the ceiling with a rope and then doing a break dance to avoid the lasers. That's what you think museums are. So when these thieves went to see the museum and tried to see where the lasers were, they thought, we only need a mechanical ladder and a hammer. And that's what they use. And unfortunately for them, and that's the stupid thing of this robbery, you always lose DNA, always. In these days, if you sneeze, they will find your DNA. And you must understand, the thieves who did this have done this before. They are professional thieves. It's not like that you wake up on a Sunday morning thinking, oh, I want to become a thief, and let's start with the Louvre. It doesn't work that way. So these are professional thieves, which means that they probably have been caught before for other burglaries, and their DNA is in the systems. So if your DNA is in the systems and you decide to rob the Louvre and you just have to sneeze 1 time, they left a helmet, they left a hammer, they left a car behind. They wanted to put the car on fire, it didn't work. So it was doomed to fail. And that's what I don't understand in this case. You know, if you rob the Louvre, you know you're going to get the entire French police force after you. Not only 5 or 6, more than 100. So you know you're going to get caught.
They left a crown behind as well, right?
They left,
crown, they dropped a crown. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, question
Hi,
to
Emily,
you.
by the way.
So,
No, I just want to say hello to Emily. We never met personally, and I know her, of course, for my job.
No, that's amazing. I think you guys complement each other very well, as everyone will better understand in a few moments. Question for you both. First to Amelie, is then are we talking about what is driving this behavior, the Louvre, right? You said Arthur said he couldn't believe it. Do these people just have an Ocean's 11 complex? If you're a criminal, why would you even, not just regarding this heist, but museum heists in general seem very high risk. Why not? It seems like if I was a criminal, crypto crimes would be easier, seated in the safety of my home, rather than these really dramatic heists at museums of, very well-known works.
That's true. I think there is, as always, a mix of motives, and it'll be interesting to hear what Arthur's position or thoughts are on this. I think we see sometimes there are some thieves, and I'm thinking about Stefan Breitwieser here, who really have a passion for art. That's quite rare. It's more likely that if you want to steal jewels, quite frankly, it seems that it is just a little bit easier to do so from a museum than it is to do so from a bank vault or even Tiffany's on Bond Street or on the Champs-Élysées. So they are just naturally less well protected in a museum, and I think that makes them a target.
Are you saying that the Cartier store in Paris is probably a place with higher security than the Louvre Museum?
Yes, quite. I think absolutely. First of all, it's not as big. It is not the vast historical building that the Louvre is. It has far more money that they can put into security, and it is targeted to draw in people who buy and maybe also to some extent who watch. But it is not. The purpose is not to make works accessible to the public. So you can just secure things in a better way than in a museum.
And what was the likelihood that these thieves were going to try to sell the jewelry intact versus sort of breaking it down and selling it for parts where it's less recognizable, Amelie?
That's a question we've just gotten in the chat from Nile. So yeah, that's a really good question.
I mean, there is no way that they can sell them intact. Absolutely not. They are like the Mona Lisa. Everybody would recognize them, and would recognize them as stolen objects. So the only way to monetize is to break them up and recut the bigger stones that you can recut, and melt down whatever gold or platinum, etc., materials you can have. But even that is not that easy. It won't be that easy to bring an object like that intact to somebody and ask them to break it up or cut some stones out unless that person is part of the organized crime themselves. And so you might, in a first instance, have somebody who breaks it up semi-professionally. But even then, if you bring a really old, big diamond to a professional diamond cutter, they will ask questions. And normally there are certifications that you'd need for valuable stones, etc. So it's not straightforward to monetize these objects, regardless of whether you break them up or not.
Yeah.
The question I have, I think this one is more likely for Arthur, but Amelie, definitely feel free to weigh in as well. There's talk that this was an inside job, that some of the staffers at the Louvre was possibly involved. Do we know anything more about that?
Can I add one thing to Amelie, what she just said? This idea of a secret collector who orders these beautiful crown jewels to be stolen, that's from the Hollywood movies. You only see that in movies. And it started all in 1962 with Dr. No, the first James Bond movie. When that movie was written in 62, at that very moment, a painting by Goya was stolen from the National Gallery in England. So the writers thought it to be a good idea just to pretend that Dr. No, the villain, had this particular painting in his basement. So Sean Connery, James Bond, walks into this cave and sees this painting there and says, "Oh, here it is." And all the thieves who are watching that movie, they think, "Oh my God, you have secret collectors who collect these kind of things." So they start stealing paintings.
Really?
And they then try to find a Dr. No, which of course doesn't exist. But the funny thing is, the police knows that these guys are looking for a Dr. No. So once they have a lead, they disguise one of themselves with a big cigar, a Rolex, a big hat, pretending to be Dr. No. So the movie turns out to be real life. But Dr. No, as Amelie said, doesn't exist. So in this case, it was not stolen on order for some secret collector in Russia or China or wherever.
That's crazy. So life imitates art. And you know, so I think I want to clarify, though, there's no market, and especially in our second Gilded Age, there's no billionaire out there who feels they're so above the law that they would just sort of commission something like this in terms of a crime. Has there been no cases of some ultra wealthy who wants a specific painting that's in a museum that they actually want in their homes? Do we know of any incidences like that at all?
It probably has happened once, some lunatic, he probably now is in jail, but I have never experienced one case in my whole career. And let's go back to your question about the inside job.
Yes.
Yeah. What we often see, and Amelie will know this too, that in many cases when something is stolen from a museum, in some cases, somebody in turn is responsible. We had this case in the British Museum a couple of years ago where a lot of stuff was stolen. The main suspect was a curator from the museum. We see it in other museums in the world that sometimes people who work there replace authentic items for forgeries, and they sell the authentic items on the market. So it could be that in this case there is somebody, maybe a cleaning man or lady or a guard, who has tipped somebody off, who knows somebody in the criminal underworld and told them, look, this room is not well protected. The glass is not thick enough. If you use a mechanical ladder, you are in right away. So it could be, but it has to be proven.
Amelie, what are your thoughts on that?
I think much like Arthur says, we see that particularly in museum heists, that we've seen it in the Dresden Green Vault case as well, that there seems to be somebody who knows, who is maybe part of the security. Same, I think, for the Border Museum coin. There is a link, normally not the first front row, but somebody who in the background can pass on information.
We have a question from our chat, and it's talking about, I guess, the prevalence of this and how often it occurs. Someone's written in, Nile again, thanks so much, Nile. Artworks are stolen frequently from Middle Eastern countries, but I read that Europe is one of the centres for art theft, where a huge chunk of art pieces are stolen from Europe. Is that, how true is that? We'll start with you, Amelie.
So I would say art theft is relatively rare these days, particularly if we look at paintings. As Arthur says, there isn't that Dr. No scenario, but also it is harder and harder to sell stolen paintings because they are so recognizable. So what we have seen kind of instead of that kind of theft is there's been a move towards stealing objects that have an inherent material value, such as the jewels or the Border Museum gold coin, but also objects that are slightly more difficult to recognize, such as Chinese porcelain or jade carvings. That's something that shows that the at least more organized crime scene have realized that stealing recognizable art is not a valuable proposition, if you want.
More trouble than it's worth, basically, or?
Yeah, you can't monetize it, and that they have learned. And so you see that shift. But I would say in general, art theft happens, yes, of course, and it still happens from private institutions as well. But at the Art Loss Register, we get registrations every day from law enforcement and insurers. And we get so many more watches, for example, than art. Watches are stolen all the time, every single day.
Really?
Yeah.
So I do want to talk to you a little bit more about the register in a few moments, but let's wrap up the Louvre. I have one last question about the Louvre. Let's check if there's any more comments about that or questions. But I want to ask both of you what you think will happen in terms of the museum management. Do you think that they have failed in their duty to have the right security in place? Do you think heads will roll as a result of this? Or is this something that couldn't have been prevented, and based on the reputation of the people that at the management level, that they are actually really good stewards of the museum? I don't know who wants to start with that. It's a little bit provocative. I know it's a small art
start.
world. Yes, please go ahead, Arthur.
Well, I was on French 24 Live with some other people, and they were very mad at the museum. It was almost as if they would take the guillotine out of the museum and chop some heads off. They were so incredibly mad. And it's not fair. First of all, every museum in the world has been a victim of theft. Every museum. We don't want to turn a museum into a fortress. It's open for the public. We don't have armed guards, old buildings. Of course, something went wrong in this case, but it happens in every museum in the world, and it will happen again in most of the museums in the world. So pointing fingers is not what I think is right. I always say, what would I have done if I would have been the director of security and you don't have the money, to protect this? So it's very, if this was the only museum being targeted, okay. But in the last couple of months, France, just 12 hours after the Louvre heist, another museum was targeted in France. They stole 2,000 Roman silver and gold coins. A month before, the National History Museum in France was targeted. Last year in the Netherlands, a very beautiful golden helmet, 2,500 years old, on loan from Romania, was stolen. The thieves the suspects are in custody. We cannot find the helmet. So you cannot point fingers. Obviously something went wrong and we should do something about it, but it happens everywhere.
Amelie, your thoughts?
I think I can very much agree with that. It's very easy to point fingers after it has happened. And I think also it's very easy to point fingers and at the same time cut budgets everywhere in the cultural sector and make it extremely hard for any museum director to basically decide, do they need to fix the leak? That means water is dripping in and potentially damaging some artworks, or can they invest in more electricity and security cameras? So you then would really have to put your money where your mouth is and if you wanted the Louvre to be as secure as a Cartier shop, you have to give them the money to do that.
We have a question, an interesting point. We'll see what you make of it. About how much this resonates with the public. I mean, obviously, this is a spectacular story, but someone's asking about, does the public really care about stolen valuables? I mean, you saw a lot of the memes online almost seeming to be on the side of the thieves, poking fun at showing it to the rich man, basically, when in actual fact, I think you made the point earlier that these jewels do belong to the French people as a whole, and maybe perhaps people don't realise that. So how much aside from the spectacular headlines, how much do people care about their national valuables being taken from them?
Amelie, do you want to take that?
I think it's always the case that where there is a big story like that sounds like a movie, that's what people gonna go for. I think the Louvre is a national treasure in France, and that I do think that people care about the objects, but I think the general issue we have with art crime is that in the public perception, people think this is just rich people being ripped off. That's the same with forgeries and fakes. If I think, for example, about the big, huge German fakes case of Beltracchi, I mean, he's a movie star now, making a good living off his criminal story, and I think it's almost perceived like a victimless crime, and that is of course not true. And we see that in cases like Dresden or the Louvre, that there really is some national heritage that has been taken now. I think for Dresden probably even more, because it was even older and even more important for that small federal state. And so I would make a distinction, but I think in general, where the story is just too good, people will jump on that. And I mean, quite frankly, talking about memes, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I found the German media campaign from Becker, who owned the little truck genius in a way, and well done them, chapeau.
Actually, so Amelie, yes, please, go ahead, Arthur.
Yeah, what also is the case is, in most of these cases, nobody gets shot, nobody gets hurt. They get in and they get out, like in a movie, and that resonates with people. I saw a few people being interviewed who were witnesses, and they were excited. They said, "Well, I was in a movie." Other people came especially to see it, talking about it, smiling, and I understand that it is like a movie, but we should not forget that we are talking here about hardcore criminals, and that, as you said, these pieces are world heritage. Sometimes people think these belong to the museums, but these beautiful crown jewels, that's your history, it's mine history, it's Emily's history, it's from everybody. And you want little children to go there to enjoy them and to learn from the history. If you don't understand history, you don't understand current time. So you just cannot get in and rob something and everybody's applauding. That's not the way it should be.
If we can just quickly, just referring to what Amelie was referring to earlier, just so that people are understanding, maybe if the control room can bring up my laptop there, this is basically the furniture removal company. This is a company named Booker, and their removal, I guess, kind of chairlift, cherry picker device was used in the Louvre heist, and they came out with a campaign that says basically, if wenn's mal wieder schnell gehen muss, when you're in a hurry, if you're in a hurry. So this is they basically pounced on that and came out with a viral ad campaign on the back of that. So that's what Amelie was referring to a bit earlier.
Yeah, so a lot of people having a laugh, having a meme, but from both Amelie and Arthur, I hear quite a lot of emotion in terms of the work that you do. So I do want to actually take the opportunity now to dig a little bit deeper into why you do what you do. So Amelie, you are the director of the Art Loss Register. First of all, tell us a little bit about the organization. And does that mean that with the Louvre heist, as soon as that happened, your team started putting those items into your register as lost? Is that what you guys do?
So first of all, I should stress that I'm one of 4 directors at the Art Loss Register. We are a sort of a bigger team these days, but yes, register is indeed what is at the core of our work. So the company runs a database for stolen, looted art in dispute, art that went missing in conflict, etc. And so in a scenario like this, the first thing that we will indeed do is add the jewels from the Louvre and also from Dresden, etc., to the database. Sometimes the police will email us, or else we'll obviously pick up a case like this ourselves and get it onto the database. And the database has around 700,000 items that all are potentially problematic. So we are looking for them. And the way we operate, and I think that's quite different in what Arthur's work is, we offer a due diligence service to mostly the market. And by that, I mean anybody, whether you're a collector or a museum or a dealer or an auction house, can ask us to check works for them and to make sure that what you buy or sell is not problematic. And so we then get information on the pieces that come to the market and try to identify any problems they have, whether they are on our own register and registered there, or whether they are have a problematic provenance, for example, the name of a victim that was persecuted by the Nazis, or also to some extent are registered on external sources that we use kind of for our more in-depth research. And so we don't go out proactively and try to work like the police and try to find these objects, but rather we basically try to identify them when they come back to the market. And at that point in time, when we have matched something, our recoveries team jumps in and tries to facilitate a solution between the people who used to own the object and are searching for it and the people who now have access to the object because they are selling or buying it.
Yeah. Just a question from me. When you're compiling this database, do you make a judgment as to the likelihood of the art returning?
No, we make a judgment on the likelihood that we can match it and on how good the evidence is that there is a case, because we have a responsibility not to. If you, for example, called me and said, "Hey, Amelie, I want to register the Mona Lisa because it was stolen from me," that would not go onto the database. But we have kind of some checks that we do. We require some documentation, etc., proof of ownership, police records, etc. And then we check, is that enough for us to register the object? But we will add objects like the Louvre jewels, even though, as I said before, the chances that these are coming to the market in their current shape and we will then be the ones identifying them are extremely slim. I mean, are nil. For some artworks, that has worked. We've been around for a while, and that certainly helps because some objects just come back to the market, say in 30, 40 years, when people think somebody has forgotten or when they have inherited something and they might not know that it is a problematic item. But that is certainly unlikely to be the Louvre jewels.
And is your team mostly art historians or are they criminologists? Like, what do you need to study if you want to work for your organization? It's fascinating.
It's a wild mix. We have 2 lawyers. I'm one of them. We have art historians. So I have a mixed background in law and art history. We also have people, we need lots of language skills because the sources that we work with are often in German, French, Dutch, and English, of course. And so we've got people with a background in that. We have people with backgrounds in finance that come from the compliance side, so that have very good risk assessment skills. And that's probably the most important thing that I look for whenever we recruit. It is people who can, based on imperfect facts, make a judgment and a risk assessment very quickly.
We're having a couple of comments, Amelie, about, I guess, the differences between stolen art and missing art in respect to art that has been taken by a coloniser and taken back to, for example, Britain. You know, people argue the British stole art from the colonies, but the art that people know where it is, it's just a case of getting it back. And someone else made the point that Germany has recently been returning art to its one of its former colonies, Namibia, 23 pieces in the last few years. If you could just sort of maybe talk about how you deal with this sort of classification of colonial era art.
Or the classification of the definition of stealing.
Right.
Yeah, so we've got sort of different categories. One is straightforward theft, so much like we've seen with the Louvre, but also obviously a lot from private properties, from corporations, etc., from museums, of course, as well. That's relatively straightforward. And when it comes back to the market, it's a question of getting the facts sorted and asking the right questions as to what law is applicable and what that law then says. And then we have a second category, I would say, objects that are missing that basically, for example, have been like a watch that got lost in transport, etc., which is quite often not necessarily a criminal case in the first instance, but once it's come to the light.
Oh, have we lost Amelie? She is frozen, so that is a big shame. Let's just wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to count to 3, 2, 1. Okay, so, it looks like we've lost both of them. All right, well, that's a shame. We're going to try to get them up again. What I wanted to ask Arthur next was how he got into this world, but while we're waiting for them to be reconnected, I know that we started reading about Arthur's story, and there's some couple of links that we want to share. Jared, if you want to pull it up.
Let's look at this fascinating video. It's from his Instagram, right? And this is
you guys should both follow, actually, the Art Loss Register's Instagram and also Arthur's Instagram.
The links in the comment.
Okay. Terry's
I
already.
think Arthur's back, but we've got Arthur a couple of years ago facilitating the recovery of Spring Garden by Vincent van Gogh, and he's carrying the painting in up the stairs into his apartment and what looks like to be an IKEA bag, and this very valuable painting by the Dutch master is wrapped in what looks to be some padding and a pillowcase, Arthur. So it's how on earth did you feel carrying that painting in an IKEA bag?
So Amelie, we will get to you and we'll return to you. But since we're seeing the visuals of Arthur, we weren't sure with the technical aspect who was going to come back online first. But Arthur, how on earth did you get into this world? Amelie was talking about her team and how some people were art historians, others were lawyers. What degree did you get? Is it even relevant, or tell us your backstory in terms of how you ended up doing what you're doing? You're holding a Van Gogh that you recovered in this video that we're seeing in a loop.
Well, I did some university studies. I didn't finish them. If I would have finished them, I would probably have ended up at the Art Loss Register. But I didn't. So I started as a small collector, and then I found out that there are a lot of forgeries on the market. So I started reading about it, about forgeries, about art crime. And then I met a man, Michel van Rijn, who was a converted criminal. He was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s one of the biggest art criminals in the world. He had turned side. He went to work for Scotland Yard, and he invited me over, and he taught me how this world was. He introduced me to the police. I always work with the police in every case. He gave me the context. He gave me the context to informants. And, once you are in this world, trying to track down stolen art, you don't want to leave, It's such an exciting, very rewarding, not financially, but physically, emotionally, it's a very rewarding job. And here we are, with a Vincent van Gogh by the way, IKEA also made a huge publicity campaign. Once they saw the clip all over the world, and they said, "Look, we never thought our bags would be good enough for Van Gogh, but look, if you can transport a Van Gogh in it, you can transport everything in."
I mean, it seems like there's so many from the people who made the chairlift to IKEA that, whenever there's a stolen artwork involved, everyone can sort of pile on and make a link to their own benefit.
Arthur, so you said you just kind of decided to do this. Does that mean anyone can do it? I mean, and it feels like a lot of people must have to trust you, not just the police, but also potentially criminals who reach out to you.
Yeah, of course. I work, every step I do is in cooperation and with permission from the police. I'm a civilian. I always ask permission, cooperation on a daily basis, especially in the Netherlands, but through the Dutch police, also in other countries like Germany and Spain. And, in many of these countries, the art crime group of the police is very small. In the Netherlands, we have one or two people. In other countries, in England, it's a very small group. So I think they can need all the help from me or the Art Loss Register. And your question, can anyone become this? I think so, because I don't have a real talent. The only thing I do is, if you work with the police, and I do this now for 15 years, you always have to obey the law. That's obvious. They trust you, and with the informants in the underworld, you have to keep your word. If not, they won't work with you. And it's not like thieves would call me. It's never a thief that calls me or Amelie and says, "Amelie or Arthur, you have no idea what I stole yesterday." Of course, they don't call us, but it could be an ex-girlfriend. It could be a neighbor. It could be another criminal who has heard something. And there are a lot of reasons why people call. Sometimes they want revenge. An ex-girlfriend, for example. Sometimes another criminal wants to get rid of his competitor. Sometimes somebody calls asking if there is a reward, and not a reward for the thieves, but for the informants. Somebody who's not involved, but wants to pass on information. So I think everybody could do this, but I would not advise anybody to do this because, you know, it's hard work. We have a lot of leads, and sometimes you work on it for years and you still have nothing. And you have to be available 24/7. So it's not a work I would recommend to anybody to start doing this.
Well, I have a
I would
question.
prefer to have worked. I would have preferred to work with Amelie at the Art Laws Register, but I didn't finish my studies, so here I am.
I mean, there are, it sounds like there are advantages to working solo and also the advantages of an organization. You two complement each other in many ways in this world. Amelie, you were mid-sentence. I don't know if you wanted to finish your thoughts in terms of the Art Loss Register and the work that is being done. So I wanted to check in with you. Thanks so much. I'm so glad you're back online.
Sorry about the technical hiccup. I don't know what happened, but yes, just also to address the question on colonial art, maybe. So normal theft, I had said, then there is the loss and transport. That's less relevant for this conversation. And then we have Nazi looted art as one big field, which is one that I work in on a lot, being German and being able to read the sources. And there, unlike with normal theft, it is not just a question of legal considerations, but very much of moral and ethical considerations. But we have a framework that gives us a best practice. It's called the Washington Principles, and that's kind of what the market and also the museums adhere by, and what basically dictates that a so-called just and fair solution has to be found when we make a match. Now, colonial art is something, and I would widen that. And for us, it's more sort of cultural property. So that can be objects that come from zones of conflict, such as Afghanistan or Syria or Iraq, or also, unfortunately, Ukraine these days. But and then we have the field of colonial art that for us, is part of cultural heritage. And that's where also you have some legal considerations to always bear in mind. We would not normally register something that is in the British Museum now, and where it is a question of whether or not it has to be returned, because that's not ever going to come to the market, and it's not stolen, it's not missing, so it's not really one for us. But we do, particularly you mentioned Nigeria, we do register Benin bronzes that are missing, and when we find an object from Benin, usually not because of a registration, but because of the provenance, we will be working with the parties to address this. And the difficulty in that field is that you have the law on the one side, but you have now a development that goes a little bit beyond that, also where moral, ethical considerations play a huge role. But unlike with Nazi looted art, we don't have a very clear framework yet, but we are seeing museums such as the German ones returning these objects, and we are seeing that the market is picking this up and following this. And so this is what makes it extremely interesting, I think, this kind of work. It is never a standstill. There are developments all the time about how society will perceive an object and the taint that comes sometimes with its past.
Any questions from comments, Jared?
Well, I think we've had quite a few questions on the colonial aspect. So thanks so much for answering that. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, but I did want to check. Question now to you both. Arthur, you did mention that sometimes you work for years, and it can be a thankless job, although there's the glorious moments when you do recover art. A question for both of you is there an art mystery that bugs you? Yeah. That you love to see the resolution of? I'm sure there's one.
I will give you a mystery.
Yes,
I will give you a mystery now. I will make Emily a little bit curious. Can you see the door right next to me on that side?
Yeah.
Yes.
Behind that door, Amelie, we just recovered an object stolen in World War II. It was missing for decades. It's standing behind that door. Look at Emily watching it. She's going to write me an email tonight asking me, tell me what it is. It has something to do even with the French royal family, which is great, of course, because of the Louvre. But Emily talked about these things about World War II, and the art loss register, which, by the way, is the core of the art recovery business. Without the art loss register, with their 700,000 stolen objects, we would be nowhere. Emily is too polite to say that, but let me say it for her. The art loss register is very, very important in the art world. It's the only thing we have, more or less. And they're doing a great job. But behind that door, there is this mystery. There is a painting stolen in World War II, missing for decades. Everybody thinks it's destroyed, and soon Dutch police and myself are going to hand it over. So this is a little scoop. So that's the mystery which is behind the door.
I mean, Arthur, how's your security in your apartment?
Well, I know a lot of retired art thieves. I have to talk to them, because I want to understand how they think and how they work. And they all say, Arthur, nobody dares to steal from your apartment because they will get you after them and the police. So I would dare them to come to my home and try to steal something. By the way, for the thieves that are watching, this piece will disappear tonight. It will be delivered somewhere. So don't come here tonight. And if you come, we are waiting for you.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
I actually have a question, if you don't mind me asking. Arthur, you just mentioned that you talk a lot to criminals who steal art. And I'm just curious, what's the motivation for people who steal art from a museum? As Emily also explained before, that it's really hard to sell them when they're so recognizable. And are they commissioned by other people to steal the art, or do they just steal the art hoping that they can sell it somewhere? What's your thinking? Yeah. What do you know about these criminals?
Well, the criminals are often, I hope they are not watching, but they are often not thinking it through, They just steal something and they think, what can we do with it? I talk to a lot of them. I need informants. And I said before, there was never a criminal who calls me or Emily or the police saying, oh, what I stole yesterday. So it's always somebody else who gives the information, an ex-girlfriend, etc. And it's always a problem. If you steal art, stealing art is easy. You can protect the Louvre as good as you want, but people can come in with a gun. So it's very difficult to protect. So stealing art is not that difficult. But then you have a problem. What are you going to do with the art? If you sell it, somebody checks the art loss register, and Amelie is looking behind the computer and she sees a match. And then the police is there. So it's very difficult to try to sell it. And what you often see is either they burn it or it gets destroyed. We had some very famous cases in the Kunsthal 10 years ago in the Netherlands. Very famous paintings were stolen. Probably they were burnt in the oven by the mother of one of the suspects. Once her son got arrested, she burned them in the oven. So they don't know what to do with it. And what you then hope is that somebody gives you a call, an informant, and tells you where it is. And probably Amelie will get these calls also on a weekly basis. So do I. And in many cases, people are sometimes afraid to go to the police. They are afraid that their name will be mentioned. They are afraid that the criminals will take revenge to them. So sometimes they find a way to call me or the art loss register or a journalist or whatever. But stealing art is a pretty dumb thing to do.
Well, hopefully no criminals just heard that you essentially called them unintelligent and doing rather dumb things. It's also
I said they don't think this through. They are not stupid, but they don't think it through,
Fair enough. And I've heard the angry ex-girlfriend case a number of times, which I can't help but find that amusing. Amelie, you've had some time to think about the question of what big art mystery you wish you would see resolved.
Maybe she will see it resolved when she finds out about what Arthur's
hiding in his apartment.
Hiding behind his door.
I don't have anything as exciting as Arthur, and I am gonna email you after this and ask, or I will definitely look out for what I hear
Use
in the
Signal,
next few
guys. No
hours and days.
emails.
Oh, no,
But
email.
yeah, I mean, I was thinking the first thought I had, which I would really love to see resolved, obviously, is the Isabella Stewart Gardner paintings.
Do you want to pull that up?
where
Isabella
some-
Stewart Gardner.
I mean,
Yeah. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
if you walk through that museum, you have the empty frames, and they had, say, one of the most incredible works, a seascape by Rembrandt, and I would love to see that go back and come back onto public display. I don't know. I mean, Arthur, you mentioned informers. I think if anybody knows anything about that, more likely they would pick up the phone and call you than the Artless Register, because that's the type of thing where Arthur is normally involved. But I would love to see that resolved one day. And then there are multiple Nazi-looted art cases, obviously, which are very dear to my heart because they have such a strong emotional side normally. That whether they are high or low value, I would love to see resolved as well. But they're not as kind of...
Exactly. We have, if we can bring up my screen in the control room, this is the frame which once held Storm on the Sea of Galilee from Rembrandt in the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. And this is one of the paintings that Amelie would dearly love to see again.
Amelie, could you talk a little bit about why that particular theft is significant from that museum? I believe the museum is in the United States, right?
It's in Boston, yes. I think it was just one of the biggest art heists, as in fine art, and they really stole some absolute masterpieces. And it is a huge loss, much like with the jewels in Dresden and in the Louvre. It's a huge loss for humanity. These paintings are gone, and actually... allegedly, this is the only seascape that Rembrandt ever painted. I mean, this is a unique work, and I would love to see that again, and actually to see it myself.
We're getting near the top of the hour, and I know, Arthur, that you have to get going and you have a hard out. So I want to give the opportunity to see if there's anything you feel like we haven't touched on that you think is important to discuss, whether it's in regards to work that you have worked on or misconceptions that people have.
I want to tease Emily a little bit more because I know she likes to recover some very important paintings. The most famous painting lost in World War II is Portrait of a Young Man by Rafael. In the movie The Monuments Man, you see the painting being burned in this movie. So the question is, it was stolen from Poland. Is it still there? Did it survive the war? And Emily, I can tell you that we now have two very credible witnesses who say that at least till 1967, it was seen. And this is quite a scoop. So most likely this painting, the most searched painting of World War II, is survived the war and was not destroyed as everybody thinks. So I will get probably 2 emails from Emily tonight.
That's amazing.
We can join forces and work on this together.
I would love to.
Absolutely amazing. Wow. I'm going to be Googling a lot after this conversation as well. Amelie, any thoughts from you that you feel like we might not have touched on?
I think one thing that quite often people seem to think that art theft and looting is only the pieces that are worth millions, the Picassos, the Van Goghs, etc., and because they make the headlines. And in our work at the Artless Register, we work an awful lot on very low value items that are like for the art world. I mean, it's still quite a lot of money, but say £3,000 worth of a painting or 15,000. And very often the emotional side for the victims of crime for these is huge. And I would love for people to understand that there are victims in this, and they don't necessarily they're not necessarily super rich art collectors, but it can be anybody who has inherited a small oil painting from their grandparents. And there are, particularly for Nazi-looted art, so many low-value objects that really mean everything to a family when they come back. Even books, can be a book that is worth 80 euros, but that allows for the reunification of a family that is spread all over the world. And so these are the stories that I would love to get more attention to.
And your Instagram page is actually really good in terms of covering some of this that you're talking about. Actually, both of your Instagrams are very interesting. So I highly encourage people to follow the Art Loss Register and also Arthur Brand Art Detective. It's just, again, it does... I found it very compelling looking at the pictures and the things that you have recovered, things that you're still looking for. Look, we'll leave it here with both of you, Amelie Ebbinghaus of the Art Loss Register and Arthur Brand, Art Crimes Investigator, Independent Art Crimes Investigator. Thank you to both of you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also thank you, Arthur. It was lovely to finally meet like this.
And we will meet again, Emily. Nice to meet you.
Take care.
Well, I'm so glad that the two of them met for the first time on DW News
Isn't that
Desk.
great?
Yes, and now they're going to be emailing each other secrets about the art world and the Rafael that was missing from World War II. That's amazing.
What a takeaway from this conversation, right?
Absolutely.
I can't wait to see what it actually is. Hopefully we find out.
Yeah, I'm so glad we had a small part in facilitating that. Jared, gosh, both of you guys, what do you guys think about the conversation and what are the comments like so far, like coming in?
We had a lot of questions about the classification and the handling of colonial art and what that means and the ethics around that in times like this, and that was really good to get Amelie's perspective on that, and thank you to everyone that weighed in with these particular questions. I guess we had a couple of questions on security as well, like how it went specifically about the Louvre heist and how on earth that could happen given the fame of the museum. It is the most visited museum in the world. It seems staggering, but it's happened. And I guess there's going to be lots of lessons learned, as they said. Yeah.
But if you just joined the stream now, earlier Arthur had mentioned that, in many ways, because it is a museum, it is open to the public, it's meant for people to walk and look at these objects, that the security is simply not going to be the way a commercial enterprise might actually be even more secure. So my question to Amelie about whether the Cartier store, in Paris would have higher security was an unequivocal yes from her. And I think the other thing that both of them emphasized is the fact that what was stolen is public property.
Yeah.
It's not just owned by some mysterious entity. It is the taxpayers that are impacted by this.
It's not a victimless crime.
Yeah.
It may appear to be, but according to them, it certainly isn't. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note,
maybe
it's time to revisit that poll and see if everyone...
I'll bring up the paintings in question. Sherry, just remind us of the question you were asking.
So we were asking which of the following famous paintings is currently stolen and missing. We have 4 options. Let me tell you which one is the option that most people choose. 33% of the votes goes to Gustav Klimt's The Kiss. Can we show it, Jared, maybe?
Let's bring that up. If the control room, there we go, Gustav.
So 33% thinks this painting has been stolen and still missing. 28% thinks it's Claude Monet's Water Lilies. And 20% thinks it's Pablo Picasso's Guernica. And 19% thinks it's Vincent van Gogh's Poppy Flowers. And in fact, this is the correct answer. This is the painting that's stolen and still missing. And I can even give a bit of information. This painting has been stolen twice, in fact. The first time in 1977 and the second time in 2010. And it's still not been found. So, yeah. The first time it was stolen and a decade later it was found. And
recovered, yes.
Recovered. And then the second time it was stolen in 2010 again, and now it's still missing.
There you go. The other thing I've learned in our research and preparation for the show is I did not know that the Mona Lisa had once been stolen in 1911 and it was recovered. Can you imagine that if it had disappeared?
It was. I think it was recovered under someone's bed.
Like mattress, literally?
Yeah, something like that. So fascinating.
That's wild. Well, thank you to everyone who's joined us. We hope that you found this interesting and that you learned thing or two about art heists.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. And as usual, we're going to post our topic for next week's news desk on Tuesday, so about a day before the stream starts. And that'll give you the time to have a think about the topic, weigh in our community post. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you again in a week's time. Thank you so much.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.